It was just past midnight when the wind changed. The cold howled around the lonely cabin on the edge of Sector 9, a frozen stretch of alien wilderness where humans rarely came. But Callan had lived there for years. He didn't need much, just silence, space, and a fire to keep his bones warm. He was sipping his last cup of synth tea, eyes fixed on the glowing coals in his hearth, when he heard it. A sound. Faint. Not wind. Not a machine. Something crying. He froze. He hadn't heard another living voice in weeks. Not since the last cargo drone dropped supplies from orbit. He stood up slowly, setting his cup down. The sound came again, high-pitched, soft, and desperate, like a baby. Callan grabbed his coat from the wall and pulled open the heavy metal door. Cold air slammed into him like a punch, but he ignored it. He stepped out onto his porch, scanning the snowy ground under the moonlight. Then he saw it. A small bundle. Right at the foot of the steps. He stepped closer. The sound grew clearer, a soft, weak whimper, like a kitten too cold to scream. It wasn't human. Wrapped in worn, wet cloth, glowing faintly purple under the night sky, was a baby alien. Its skin shimmered with pale blue and silver, and its eyes, half open, blinked up at him slowly. The baby was trembling. Pinned to its chest was a scrap of worn material, possibly bark or alien paper, with a crude message written in standard English. "Please save her." "I can't." Callan stared. He had no idea what species the baby was. He'd seen many over the years on space stations, in war zones, on refugee ships. But this one looked unique, fragile, almost too beautiful to be real. And clearly starving. For a moment, his heart squeezed. He thought of her. He didn't say her name anymore. He couldn't, but he remembered how small she'd been. How she'd clung to his hand when she was sick. How he'd failed to save her when the mine collapsed. His hand shook. Then the baby coughed. That sound snapped him out of it. "Okay. Okay, little one," he muttered, bending down and lifting the freezing bundle carefully into his arms. "You're safe now. You'll be warm soon." He brought her inside, shut the door, and placed her gently near the fire on a warm pile of cloth. She whimpered again, softer this time, but still weak. Her breathing was shallow. Callan moved fast. He knew how to keep bodies alive. He had once patched up miners with broken legs and burned lungs. He prepared a nutrient mix from his emergency rations and dripped it slowly into the baby's mouth using the carved wooden spoon. She drank. Not much, but enough to survive a little longer. He checked her skin, icy, but not frostbitten yet. He wrapped her in thermal blankets and set a slow heat emitter under her bedroll. She blinked again. A tiny hand reached out and curled around his finger. That's when he noticed 3 fingers, long and elegant. No claws, no sharp teeth. No sign of venom or infection. Just a baby. "I don't know who left you here," he whispered, voice low, rough with emotion. "But you were meant to die in this cold, weren't you?" The fire cracked behind him. Wind howled again outside. Callan stood, walked to the door again, and opened it slowly. He looked out into the snow. The baby hadn't just fallen here. Someone had brought her, set her down gently. Someone with 2 legs, probably adult-sized, by the shape of the light tracks. And the trail didn't vanish. It led away, limping. Small blood stains. Broken frost flowers. The trail curved toward the trees beyond the ridge. "Who are you?" he murmured into the wind. Who had left the child, and why? Did they mean to return, or were they running for their life? He looked back at the baby. She was asleep now, breathing slow, peaceful. He looked outside again, then back at the fire, and he made a choice. He took a deep breath, grabbed his jacket and his old plasma rifle, half rusted, barely functional, and slung his worn pack over his shoulder. He paused by the sleeping child. "I'll be back," he said. "I'm going to find your mother." With that, he stepped out into the snow, the door closing behind him with a soft hiss. The wind swallowed his tracks as he disappeared. into the night, following the trail of the one who left behind everything. The wind had teeth. It bit through Callan's coat as he walked into the dark forest, following the faint tracks in the snow. His boots crunched with every step, but the sound vanished into the storm. He could have stayed. He could have said, "Not my problem," and stayed warm by the fire. But something deep inside him, something that had gone silent for years, had woken up. When that baby's tiny hand wrapped around his finger, he wasn't sure what it was. But he couldn't ignore it now. The tracks were light. The snow had already begun to cover them. But Callan had spent 20 years mining through alien ice. He knew how to see what others missed. 2 footprints, small and uneven. 1 foot dragging. She was injured. A smear of blood on a sharp stone confirmed it. He moved faster. Every so often, he paused, listening. No sound except wind and the creaking of frozen trees. But something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet. No animals, no chirps, no flutters in the branches, like the land itself was holding its breath. Then he heard something. A low growl. He turned sharply. To his right, just beyond the ridge, the snow shifted. A shape rose from behind a bush, tall, 4-legged, with jagged fur and burning yellow eyes. A skarnwolf. Callan hadn't seen one in 5 years. They were thought to be extinct in this region. But now, one stood 10 meters away, staring straight at him, and it was hungry. Callan raised his old plasma rifle, hands steady. The beast growled again, stepping forward. "I don't want to hurt you," Callan said quietly. "But I will." The wolf lunged. A blast of blue light cut through the storm. Shot hit the snow, not the beast. It dodged fast. Callan rolled to the side, reloaded by instinct. His second shot struck the creature's leg. It yelped and stumbled, then turned and fled into the trees. Breathing hard, Callan didn't waste time. He checked his rifle's battery, half dead, and moved on. The tracks were clearer now. He followed. Broken branches, spots of blood, and disturbed snow until he reached a small clearing. There, curled against a fallen log, was her, the alien mother. She looked like a statue, skin bluish-purple, frost forming along her lashes. Her arms were wrapped tightly around her chest, her body shivering violently. Her clothes were torn, barely covering her frame. Blood marked one thigh, where a long gash had frozen open. Callan stepped forward slowly. Her eyes opened, bright violet, and wide with fear. She hissed, weak but defensive, trying to push herself away. "It's okay," Callan said gently, kneeling beside her. "I'm not here to hurt you. I found your child." Her body tensed, her cracked lips moved. "You took her." "I saved her," he said. "She's warm, safe, at my cabin." Tears welled in her glowing eyes. Then she collapsed, her energy gone. Callan didn't wait. He wrapped her in his coat and hoisted her onto his back. She was light, far too light, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Her breath was shallow against his neck. The walk back was brutal. The wind was stronger now, and night was deeper. But Callan's mind stayed locked on one thing. She had tried to die. Alone, in the cold, far from her child. A mother who had given up everything for her baby's chance. And now, she might die anyway, but not if he could help it. When he finally reached the cabin, the heat hit him like a wall. He kicked the door shut behind him and placed her near the fire, beside the now sleeping baby. Her eyes fluttered open again. She looked at the child, and something inside her broke. A sob escaped her lips. Callan got to work. He cleaned her wound, applied warming gel to her fingers, and made her drink a few drops of liquid nutrition. The alien woman didn't speak for a long time. She just stared at her baby, alive, breathing. "You're lucky," he said at last. She looked up. "Lucky? I found her?" She whispered. "No," Callan said. "Lucky I couldn't walk away." She blinked. "Why didn't you?" He didn't answer. He just looked at the baby, then at the fire, and the room fell into silence. But for the first time in many years, Callan didn't feel alone. Snow still covered the windows, but inside the cabin, warmth and silence wrapped around them like a blanket. Callan sat near the fire, watching the alien mother breathe. Her name, he learned, was Zira. She whispered it in a weak voice when she woke the next morning. Her first word wasn't thank you. It wasn't even about herself. It was a question. Is my child still breathing? Callan simply pointed toward the bundle on the floor. The baby was curled up, warm, gently snoring under thick thermal blankets. Zira let out a sound halfway between a cry and a laugh. Then she passed out again. Over the next 3 days, Callan became something he hadn't been in years. A caretaker. He boiled soups, patched wounds, and fed the child drop by drop. The baby, now full of soft, sleepy energy, had begun to coo and wiggle. She stared at him with curious violet eyes and reached out to grab his fingers with her 3 tiny hands. Callan had never cared for a baby before, but somehow, her small weight in his arms didn't feel strange. It felt like something forgotten, like muscle memory from another life. Zira, meanwhile, slowly regained strength. She sat near the fire most days, wrapped in furs, watching Callan quietly. She barely spoke, but her eyes tracked everything. How he handled the child, how he cooked, how he fixed the heater panel with broken tools and half-fried circuits. She didn't understand him. Why would a human help her? A stranger? A starving, half-dead alien woman who had left her own child behind in the cold. But Callan didn't ask for thanks. He didn't ask for anything. On the 4th night, Zira finally spoke more than one sentence. Callan was setting out extra fuel logs when she said softly, "Where is your family?" He didn't turn. He didn't need to. "Gone," he said. Zira lowered her gaze. "Mine too," she whispered. "Or maybe I was never part of theirs." He looked over. She pulled her furs tighter. Her voice trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper. "My species, the Viren, are strict. If you carry a child with a mutation, one with soft bones or different eyes, they call it cursed. They erase you. My daughter is too soft, too emotional. She cried the first day she was born." She smiled bitterly. "My kind doesn't cry." Callan stared into the fire. "That's probably why they lost their souls," he muttered. Zyra looked at him. "You don't even know us." He met her gaze. "I don't need to. I just know she's a child. A life. No one throws that away." Zira blinked, stunned by the simplicity of his words. For a long time, neither of them said anything, but something shifted. The next morning, Zira stood for the first time. Her legs shook. She leaned on the wall, but she walked slowly to the edge of the room where Callan was fixing the old power coil. "I want to help," she said. He looked up. She was serious. Callan simply nodded and handed her a cloth. By the end of the week, they were working like a team. Zira cooked her first meal, strange green stalks from the back of Callan's storage, boiled in spice broth. It was bitter, but she smiled when the baby swallowed it happily. "You'll grow strong now," she whispered to her daughter, brushing her small cheek. "No more fear." Callan watched the scene silently. And for the first time in years, his cabin didn't feel empty. One evening, Zira stood outside, holding her baby to her chest as the sun set over the snowy ridge. Callan came up beside her, holding 2 cups of hot tea. "You're not scared anymore," he said. She didn't answer right away. "I am," she finally replied. "But now, I'm not alone." She looked at him, eyes glowing in the fading light. "Why are you doing this, Callan?" He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, softly, "Because once, I lost someone, and I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you." Zira clutched the baby tighter. "I never meant to survive," she said. "I only wanted her to." "You both survived," Callan said. "And this," he nodded to the cabin, "this isn't just shelter anymore, it's a start." That night, as they all sat near the fire, Zira whispered something in her language. Callan didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. She was blessing the moment. The baby laughed, and for once, the cold outside didn't matter. The fire had burned low. It was near midnight, but neither of them could sleep. Zira sat near the window, holding her baby close, humming a soft alien lullaby, one so quiet and haunting it sounded like the wind itself was listening. Callan sat across the room, sharpening a small utility blade, the light dancing across his tired face. They hadn't spoken in hours, not because there was nothing to say, but because what needed to be said was heavy. Too heavy for casual moments. Zira finally broke the silence. What was her name? Callan didn't ask who she meant. He didn't have to. His hands paused, the blade in his grip stilled. Lyra, he said quietly. She was 6. Zira lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper. Was she your daughter? Callan nodded, eyes fixed on the blade. She loved machines. Would sit on my lap while I repaired old drones. She'd ask questions no one her age should ask. Said she wanted to build ships one day. Big ones. The kind that could carry people across stars. Zira didn't interrupt. Her arms tightened around her baby. One day, Callan continued, there was a malfunction down in the mining tunnels. An old plasma pump, faulty wiring. It blew a hole in the ceiling. I was supposed to pick her up from school, but I stayed late to fix the system. He blinked slowly. The roof collapsed. Silence filled the room like thick smoke. I never forgave myself, he whispered. Zira's eyes glistened. I know that guilt, she said. She looked down at her daughter. Knew my species was cruel. I knew they didn't want her, but I waited too long. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd change their minds. Instead, they turned on me. I saw it coming, and still I hesitated. Callan looked up. What did they do? They stripped us of everything, she said, voice shaking. My name was erased from the records. My home locked, my partner, the father, disappeared. I begged for help. One elder took pity and told me, run, tonight, or your child will not live past dawn. Her words dropped like stones. I didn't have credits. I didn't have a plan. Just instinct. I walked for days. Ate snow, hid in dirt. And when I saw your cabin, I thought, maybe if I left her there, you'd show her mercy. She looked up now, eyes wet and shining. I never expected you'd show it to me too. Callan's jaw clenched, his chest tight. I didn't save you out of pity, Zira, he said. I saved you because someone gave up on my child once. I promised myself, if I ever had a chance to be the person I needed back then, I'd take it. The baby stirred in Zira's arms, making a soft cooing sound. She smiled faintly, but the warmth didn't last. Suddenly, a low mechanical hum buzzed through the walls. Both of them went still. Callan stood up, moved to the window, and peered through. The frost. A blinking red light passed over the cabin. Zira's face went pale. No, she whispered. Not yet. They can't be here already. Callan turned to her. Who? She hugged her baby tighter. They must have traced my genetic trail or scanned for energy signals when I healed. That light. It's a seeker drone. They're not here to ask questions. They're here to finish what my people started. Callan didn't wait. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the door, double-locking the metal bolts. Then he powered down the outer sensors and shut off the heating grid's outside beacon. The cabin went dim, running on backup energy. They won't see heat now, he muttered. Zyra stood, legs shaky, but her arms steady. If they come inside, they won't, Callan said. Not tonight, she hesitated. Why are you still helping me? She asked again. Now it's not just kindness, it's danger. He looked her straight in the eyes. Because I already made peace with dying. But this, giving someone else a second chance, that's living. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, quietly, she reached out and placed her hand on his. No words, just warmth, connection. A rare moment between two souls who had every reason to give up, but didn't. The drone buzz faded into the sky, but it was a warning. The past had found them. Now they had to prepare. The next morning, the sky was too quiet. No birds, no wind, no movement. Callan stood on the cabin roof, his coat whipping in the cold air. He held an old pair of binoculars, scanning the distant ridge. The sun was rising, but the light didn't feel warm. It felt like the beginning of something dangerous. Below, Zero watched from the window with her baby in her arms. Her fingers trembled not from fear, but from memory. She had seen this before, right before her world collapsed, inside the cabin. Callan worked quickly. He opened a secret hatch in the floorboards. Beneath it were crates of old mining equipment, salvaged drones, and parts of forgotten machines. Tools from a life he left behind. He began to build. Zyra helped silently, skillfully. She understood weapons, power cells, proximity sensors. Her people had trained her to serve the system that now wanted her dead. Now she was using that knowledge to survive. What are we building? She asked, wiring a small cube with blinking lights. A message, Callan said. One that says, this home doesn't fall easily. That afternoon, they heard it. The low, deep hump of shuttle engines. A sleek black ship hovered just above. The trees, its surface shining like polished stone. No flags. No marks. Just silence and power. It landed in the clearing with eerie grace. From its hatch, 3 figures stepped out, tall, armored. Their suits shimmered with sharp silver lines, and their helmets covered their faces like dark glass. One of them raised a scanning device. A red beam swept across the ground, then stopped, pointing directly at the cabin. Zira's face turned white. It's them, she whispered. The Syndicate hunters. She backed away, clutching her baby tightly. I should run, she said. If I leave now, you're not leaving, Callan said. This is your home now. They want to fight, they'll get it. Zira looked at him, stunned. You'd risk your life for me? No, Callan said calmly, locking his old rifle into place. I'm risking it for us. The first warning came fast. A small drone zipped across the clearing, silent, almost invisible. But Callan had wired the outer perimeter. As soon as the drone crossed the invisible line, a pulse mine hidden beneath the snow exploded in a flash of blue light. The drone crashed, burning. The figures outside paused, then spread out. Callan watched from a narrow slit in the wall. They're testing us, he said. Measuring our response. What do we do? Zira whispered, holding the child close. We make them afraid. Night fell, and the hunters returned. They moved like shadows, silent, strategic. One crept near the fuel shed. Another circled toward the back window. Callan waited, heart pounding, eyes steady. Then he flipped the switch. Hidden plasma coils beneath the shed's roof lit up in an instant. A roar of fire shot up, catching the closest hunter in the blast. He screamed, falling back, his armor glowing red with heat. The other 2 rushed in. Zyra moved fast, ducking low with the baby. She reached a corner panel and pressed a code. The outer wall dropped a thick curtain of ionized smoke, blinding the attackers. Then Callan stepped outside, rifle in one hand, an old mining torch in the other. Your scanners told you we were weak, he shouted. They were wrong. The remaining hunters opened fire, blue bolts tearing into the smoke. Callan dodged behind a rock, aimed, and returned fire. His shots weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. One of his shots hit a gas pipe he'd buried hours earlier. Boom. The explosion lit up the sky. One of the attackers flew backward, his weapon spinning from his hand. The last one turned, shouting in a strange alien tongue. Zira stepped out behind him. She held a stun spear, one her people had once forced her to train with. Now she used it against them. She struck clean. Right between the plates of his armor. The hunter dropped. Silence. Smoke drifted over the battlefield. Len lowered his rifle. Breathing hard, Zira stood beside him, her chest rising and falling fast. Looked at each other, two people who had just defended something that didn't even exist a week ago. A home. A family. Behind them, inside the cabin. The baby giggled, oblivious to the danger. Zira stepped forward and whispered, "They'll send more." "I know," Callan said, "but now we send a message." That night, Callan activated a long-range emergency beacon, but instead of calling for help, he sent a recording. "To whoever listens, we are not your enemy, but we will not run. You come for the child, you come through us." The beacon glowed red as it fired into the stars. Far above, someone would hear it. Maybe friend, maybe foe, but they would know this. A human had chosen to protect the unwanted. And that changes everything. Ash floated through the cold morning air. The forest was quiet again, but the silence had changed. It wasn't peace. It was tension, like the woods were holding their breath, waiting for the next strike. Callan stood outside, hammering new reinforcement plates to the cabin walls. His hands were blistered, his coat torn, and his left arm had been grazed during the fight. But his eyes were focused, steady. He wasn't just building a defense anymore. He was building a stand. Inside, Zira sat beside the baby, her hands shaking slightly as she braided glowing vines into small traps, living plants that could sense heat and movement. They grew fast, curling tightly around her fingers, as if they knew her. As if they remembered who she used to be. Her daughter slept peacefully nearby, unaware of the world trying to erase her. Zira whispered, "She doesn't know what strength she was born into." Later that evening, as the orange glow of sunset hit the cabin's metal siding, Zira stepped outside. She carried the baby in a sling across her chest. Callan looked up. "You shouldn't be out here." "She needs to see it," Zira replied. "The place we're fighting for. The home she almost never had." They stood in silence, side by side, watching the sky. Then Zira said, "They will come again. In greater numbers." "I know," Callan said. "We can hold them." Zira looked down. Not just with weapons, not just with walls. She opened her hand. A small spark danced across her palm. Callan stared. "What is that?" She didn't answer immediately. Then slowly she said, "My people called it Nthara, the life energy. It flows through living things, plants, trees, even soil. Most can't touch it. But some of us, we're born with it inside." Her voice grew quieter. "I was one of them. It was why they feared me." She knelt down and touched the ground. In seconds, tiny vines began growing under the snow. They cracked through the ice and reached for the sky, alive, glowing faintly. Callan stepped back, stunned. "You can control life?" Zira nodded. "I didn't use it before. I was afraid. I thought hiding would keep her safe." She touched the baby's cheek, "But now I see fear never protects. It only delays what must be faced." That night, they prepared together. Zira stood at the edge of the woods, guiding the vines to coil around the trees like serpents. She whispered in her language, and the ground listened. Roots twisted into snares. Thorns rose from the frozen soil. She became something more than a mother. More than a survivor. She became a guardian. Meanwhile, Callan set up motion sensors, shock panels, and a chain of hidden traps along the tree line. His movements were calm, measured. Two different warriors, one with tools, one with nature, fighting. For the same reason, not out of hate, but out of love. Before dawn, it began. Flashes of light appeared on the horizon, flickering like stars, but falling fast to drop pods. At least 10. They slammed into the snow, steam hissing from their sides. From each one, a soldier emerged, bigger, faster, more armored than before. Zira stepped forward, cloak blowing in the wind. Callan joined her. Rifle raised. "You don't have to stay in front," he said. She smiled. "This time, I do." The soldiers approached with perfect formation, but the ground beneath them moved. Vines burst through the snow, wrapping around their legs and weapons. Trees bent low, branches snapping with sudden force, slamming into the attackers. One soldier raised a flamethrower. Zira threw up her hands, and the snow turned to mist, smothering the fire. Callan's traps fired one after another, darts, EMP. Blasts, sonic bursts, screams echoed through the trees. One soldier broke through, charging straight toward the cabin. Zira didn't move. The soldier raised his blade, and then stopped. Frozen. Literally frozen roots had shot from the ground and wrapped around his body, locking his limbs in solid ice and bark. Zira's eyes glowed. She stepped closer and whispered, "This is not your land. This is not your child. Go back to your masters and tell them she is not alone anymore." When the sun rose, only one drop pod flew back into the sky. Inside it, the last soldier was shaking, and the message he carried would change everything. The child is protected by a human. And something else, something we cannot fight. Back at the cabin, Zira knelt in the snow, cradling her baby in one arm and a vine-wrapped seed in the other. "I'm not weak," she whispered. "Not anymore." Callan stepped beside her. He didn't speak. He didn't have to, because when the weak stand tall, they don't need to shout. They just hold the line. The battle was over, but peace didn't come with a grand parade or silence. It came gently. Like the snow, falling slow and soft through the morning light, covering the scars in the earth with a clean white blanket. Zira sat on the porch, her baby sleeping in her arms, both of them wrapped in a thick woven blanket Callan had stitched together from scraps. Her eyes were tired, but calm. The kind of calm that only comes after you've survived what was meant to end you. Callan stepped out beside her, holding 2 steaming mugs. "Still watching the tree line?" he asked. Zira smiled faintly. "No, just watching the future." She looked down at her daughter, who let out a tiny, happy sigh in her sleep. "She's safe now." "Because of you," Callan said. Zira shook her head gently. "Because of us." Later that day, the message came. A small shuttle, this one not dark and cold, but white, peaceful, and marked with a symbol neither of them had seen before. It landed slowly, respectfully, on the other side of the ridge. Callan reached for his rifle. Zira held out a hand. "Wait!" From the shuttle, 2 figures stepped out, unarmed. One was human. The other was a Viren woman, older, with silver-touched skin and no weapons on her belt. The human woman raised both hands. "We're not with the Syndicate," she said. "We're with the Outer Accord." Callan lowered the rifle slightly. "The who? We monitor exile zones. We saw your beacon. And we saw what you did." She nodded to the scorched tree line and the frozen wreckage of the last attack. "You didn't run. You protected the child. You fought for her. That means something." Zira stepped forward, wary but curious. The older Viren spoke next softly. "Carefully, your daughter, she is not cursed. She is rare. And you are not the only one who believes she deserves to live." Zira's lips parted in disbelief. "You're not with them?" The woman nodded. "I was once. I left. Others have to. We've built something. A place where those rejected by the old systems can live free." She looked down at the sleeping child in Zira's arms. "If you want a home, a real one, you have a place with us." Callan didn't speak for a long time. He stared at the snow. Then he said, "What if we already have one?" Zira looked at him. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. She saw it in his eyes. This cabin, these woods, this quiet life. It had become more than a hiding place. It had become theirs. The Outer Accord respected that. They offered supplies, medical kits, books, and communication access. Not a rescue, just support. Zira accepted a necklace from the Viren Elder One, glowing softly with old energy, a sign of acceptance from her true people. And then, the shuttle left. No orders. No threats. Just hope. Days passed. The snow began to melt. Spring, slow and stubborn, touched the trees with green. Zira planted roots behind the cabin, literal ones. The vines she once used in battle now grew into flowering trees that bent gently over the porch. Her powers were no longer hidden. She taught the baby how to feel the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. Callan fixed the roof, rebuilt the wind turbine, repainted the old panels with soft colors. Zira liked lavender, sky blue, deep forest green. The baby took her first steps between them both, laughing and wobbling across the floor with hands reaching for whoever called. Her name was Myra, a Viren word. It meant light from sorrow. One night, as stars bloomed across the sky, Zira sat beside Callan on the porch again. The baby was asleep in her arms. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Not sending us away?" He chuckled softly. "Regret? No." He looked up at the stars. "I lost everything once. I thought I was done, broken. But then, the universe dropped something small and soft on my doorstep. And it didn't break me." Zira leaned her head gently on his shoulder. "It rebuilt you." He nodded slowly. "She rebuilt both of us." Somewhere in the galaxy, the Syndicate still searched for order and control. But deep in the snow-covered wild, on a world most had forgotten, a human and an alien raised a child who would grow up, knowing she was never unwanted. Not ever. And, for the first time in a long, long time, human and alien had become something new. Not enemies, not strangers, but family.